And welcome to the Ask More Questions podcast. Today I've got a repeat guest, Andrew the Apostate. It's we're recording on Black Friday, and so I don't have any money, so
Same.
so just gonna why not record? Why not create instead of consume, right? So here we are. We're doing
Absolutely.
something that I think is arguably better. But yeah, so we're going to revisit a topic today that touched on the first time that we talked in episode blah blah blah. Well, it's been a while, but a while ago,
Yeah.
and we're going to talk about it's touchy, but slavery in the Bible. So yeah, you got anything you want to kick us off with whenever we talk about this?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like, first off, I think it's important that we have some disclaimers when talking about such a sensitive subject. First off, for everyone listening here, content warning. We're going to be discussing historical slavery, both in the ancient Near East, the Old Testament's context, and in the antebellum South. This includes the owning of men, women, and children, and their vulnerability to physical violence up to and including death and sexual exploitation. So if that's
Uh,
something that is, you know, rough for you to consume, like, we understand.
yeah, it's fine. Just shut it off. There's other things that are less sensitive to
Yeah,
listen to. So, but if you're interested, and I know that this has been certainly a study of yours for a while now, where you've been really diving in deep, trying to learn all you can. And it
yeah,
is interesting to me, and I'm sure you've noticed this too, that sometimes it almost seems like Christians. I'm going to have to limit this to Christians because I don't really know what the Muslim stance on you know um, on slavery is. I guess it's probably pretty similar, honestly. But that's a I don't know, so I'm not going
yeah,
to comment on that. But there are plenty of Christian apologists that almost try to make it seem like, oh no, you've got it all wrong about slavery and what the Bible says about slavery. And I'm like, well, really? I don't know. I
mm-hmm,
mean, I have some pretty basic tenets about slavery that pretty much boil down to I don't think it's right to own human beings as property.
yeah,
Um, you call me crazy.
absolutely.
So
And in
yeah,
fact, I'll say another disclaimer. If you are a Christian and if you think that the Bible condemns slavery, and if finding out that the Bible endorses slavery would make it to where you think slavery is good, just turn this off. I want you to be against slavery, okay? But
yes,
if you are like us and you have a presupposition that owning people is wrong in all instances, like, I think you'll be interested in this.
yeah, I agree. All right, well, we might as well get started with the
Yeah,
beginning, wherever the beginning is.
absolutely.
Traditionally, we're talking about Genesis, unless there's anything before Genesis that we might need to talk about. But yeah, I don't know. Tell me
Yeah,
what you found.
absolutely. So as you said in the beginning, and I guess just real quick clarification, today we'll be talking about exclusively slavery that is endorsed in the Hebrew Bible or the Old Testament. We do not have time to get into the New Testament because this alone is going to take us a little bit, and we'll probably have to come back to the New Testament. So, as I said in the beginning, in Genesis 2:15, uh, it reads, "The Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to till and keep it." Now, for most people reading that, like, probably don't really see that as anything to do with slavery whatsoever.
Mm.
Um, but when we compare it to other creation myths of the time, the Enuma Elish and the Epic of Atrahasis, in those stories, the gods create humanity to replace the lesser gods as slave labor.
Okay.
And in the same way, Yahweh here is creating Adam, who is a prototype of humanity, like he represents all of humanity. And he places him in the garden to work it. Now, if this further seems like a stretch, in McClellan's recent book, The Bible Says So, he mentions that the word for worship is avad, which fundamentally referred to doing work or service for someone, and most commonly the work of an enslaved person. So to worship God in the Hebrew Bible is to serve him, and this language repeatedly evoked the concept of enslavement. This same word is what is used, is translated as, tilling.
Yeah.
So it's straight up saying that God is creating humans to be his slaves.
Yeah. Laborers. I mean, however you want to look at, it's not like they had a choice, right? I mean, it was, if you say, put them in the garden, I mean, it obviously gives purpose and it gives a direction about it. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there's nothing else in there about lounging around and doing nothing, for instance. Right. I mean,
Yeah.
it does insinuate like, listen, I made Adam specifically for this purpose to be a gardener.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Yeah, absolutely. And if we like, if anyone's familiar with Dan's videos on who the first liar was in the Bible and
Uh-huh.
what exactly was going on when Adam and Eve was banished, like we know that God lied to Adam and Eve. He told them that, hey, if you eat of the tree of knowledge, you will certainly die. You will die that day. And
Right.
that does not happen. In fact, what happens is exactly what the serpent says. When you eat of this tree, your eyes will be opened. You will gain knowledge. You will be like the gods.
Uh-huh.
And so God created Adam and Eve to be, slave labor who did not know any better. They did not know knowledge. They didn't have wisdom. And he did not want them to be anywhere near equals to him. So
Yeah.
that concept of a relationship that people always say, oh, it's a relationship. And it's that's not how it's being described here in Genesis. And
Yeah.
so, if we keep that in mind, we understand why God was pissed and why he drove them out of the garden. It's because he didn't want them to then reach out and get the fruit of life and obtain immortality and become truly equal with him, to be gods
Uh-huh.
like him. It explicitly says that. And so he's mad that he's lost his slave labor in the garden, at least. And he drives them out and says, hey, look, you had it easy being my slave here. Now your life is going to be harder out there.
Yeah. Are there any parallels to God's being pissed off compared to like Enuma Elish,
Oh, yeah.
Atrahasis, those older stories?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, really, if you want to go and take a look at the Enuma Elish and the Epic of Atrahasis and compare them with stories like the Flood and other instances, it's pretty clear that the authors of Genesis are taking from those stories
Uh-huh.
and adapting it. Now, those other gods are portrayed as more vindictive, I think. The
Yeah.
reason for the flood in, I think, both stories is that the chief deity couldn't get sleep.
Couldn't get to sleep, right? Yeah.
And so he's like, look, all these slaves that we got are making too much noise.
Yeah.
Let's kill them. And so the author of Genesis takes that and says, oh, well, no, they were very, very wicked. That's the reason for the flood.
Yeah.
Recognizing that, that justification for killing everyone is not great.
Yeah.
I'd argue that, saying that the adults are wicked doesn't necessarily justify, or doesn't justify at all, killing everybody, including the
Right.
children.
And then you
Like,
tie that into the Garden of Eve, really. And it's just, we see anger,
mhm,
and then we see that being implemented in a way where it leads to banishment
yeah,
for doing something, right?
banishment,
Uh,
curses. I mean, we were told that the entirety of human suffering is because of the fall.
right.
And the fall doesn't happen, if we look at it closely, because Adam and Eve ate a fruit. It happened because God chose to curse them. Like, he is the active agent in cursing
That's a good point.
them.
Yeah. I mean, there was quote unquote disobedience, and I know that there's been plenty of talk about how could they know that they were disobeying if they didn't have the knowledge of being able to disobey. But yes, the outcome of that is just I'm pissed off, and you guys are banished.
Yeah.
For and and I did see somebody mention the other day something about an apple, and I'm like, it doesn't say apple. It just says fruit,
Yeah.
which is, because I think apples are okay. I got some apple crisp from Thanksgiving upstairs that I'll probably have
Mm,
later, but so, and I think I'll be okay.
yeah.
Um, okay, so
Yeah.
moving
Moving
on
on, if
then.
that's okay with you.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So we go a little bit further into another story that is like crucial to understanding, um, like just the development of slavery and how the Bible's used to justify slavery in general, is Genesis 9:18 to 27. And so
Okay.
this, a little context, this happens after the flood. Noah's hanging out. He gets drunk and uh, passes out in his tent. And one of his sons comes in, Ham, and sees him naked. And he goes out and tells his brothers. And his other brothers, come in facing away from Noah and puts a cloak on him. There's been a lot of debate on like as to what exactly Ham did. I think
Uh-huh.
it's pretty convincing for me that it's just exactly what it is. It's that he went in, saw his father naked, and then started giggling about it. And to us, it seems extreme to get this pissed at a kid, as we will see what's
Uh-huh.
going to happen, just for that. But in this, ancient context, like, honor is extremely important.
Yeah.
And being dishonorable toward your parents, especially your father, was not okay.
Yeah.
And
Not
so,
only
yeah.
that, but I mean, it's just frankly embarrassing to see your parents naked,
Okay.
no matter what's going on. And granted, clearly Noah in the story is dealing with a little PTSD, right? Everybody's been wiped out, becomes an alcoholic, and then he's laying around naked, and his kids are dealing with stuff, like, man, I don't know what to do about dad anymore. So, I get that, but yes, I get the honor thing, and I think that that's more of a. I think it's just something that kind of almost innately a lot of us recognize, just as we don't want to see our parents naked.
Oh, yeah.
Um, yeah.
I mean, there's definitely that. Honestly, though, I think in these contexts and others, like, probably just seeing your parents naked in general wasn't necessarily out of the norm. It's
Hmm.
more of to do with Ham's response to it, of like
Got it.
him giggling
Yeah.
about it, him not
Yeah.
trying to preserve his father's honor.
Right.
Um, that's the issue, is like he acted dishonorably toward his father, and in this context, that's a big no-no.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people like remember in uh later in the law codes that talks about like if a son dishonors his parents, like he's supposed to be stoned to death.
Hmm.
Like, they
Yeah.
took that seriously.
They did take it seriously.
Um, but anyway, so when Noah wakes up, he says, "Cursed be to Canaan," which Canaan is Ham's youngest son, um, or Ham's son. "Lowest of slaves shall he be to his brothers." He also said, "Blessed by the Lord my God be Shem, and let Canaan be his slave. May God make space for Japheth, and let him live in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his slave." So
Hmm.
that's pretty rough. Like, he's cursing his one part of his descendants, his son, like his grandson, and all of his descendants to be slaves to his other sons. Um, and like, of course, like approaching this from a historical critical perspective, this story didn't actually happen. This is
Right.
an etiology, a story to explain why Israel is justified in enslaving the Canaanites.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but what's also important is to understand how this story has been used to justify slavery in more modern times.
Okay, so hold on, hold on, hold
Yeah,
on.
yeah, go ahead.
You're saying that the justification for garden run of the mill slavery really boils down to this action with Ham and Noah
Yeah,
and Ham's brother too. Um, it all it's and man, you're blowing my mind because you read things, and that's what I like about literature is about how you can read it several times and get different
yeah,
meanings out of it, and about how it didn't register. I just recently reread this,
hmm,
and then it didn't register in me that curse, and then the idea of slavery being like wrapped up in that,
hmm,
and then the downstream implications of that.
yeah.
Wow,
I'm gonna blow
that's
your mind a
something.
little bit more in a second.
Okay, keep going.
So, um, so when we start to get into the Hellenistic period, and like when the Greeks are ruling everything, and then the Romans, and around the time like whenever the New Testament happens and stuff after it,
Hmm.
we start to see not racism necessarily, because like race as a concept hasn't quite been invented,
Yeah.
but we do definitely see prejudice against certain ethnicities,
Hmm.
and wrapped up in that is also skin color.
Yeah.
And already in this period and a little bit further, we see polemics against people with black skin. Um, and by the 4th century, we see Christians actually using this story about Ham to say that people with black skin are cursed, that this is why they have black skin.
By the fourth century.
Yeah.
Okay, because I've heard
4th
some of
century
that
CE.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
See.
So that's early compared to like
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
we typically think that race like really took off as a concept, but we see
Hmm.
already like back then some anti-black rhetoric.
Right.
Um, I got a quote here from Didymus the Blind, a 4th century Christian commentator, who stated that Ethiopians share in the devil's evil and sin, getting their name from his blackness.
Ouch.
Yeah. Um, and like,
What a
to be clear,
jerk.
in the context of like the original story, um, well, sorry, I missed something. So Christians and other people started associating the word ham with blackness, trying to
Hmm.
say that ham meant black, and it doesn't. Like, we don't have any evidence of like the etymology of that, but
Hmm.
it didn't matter because the people at the time didn't like people with black skin. They saw this and they were like, oh, we can use this to justify not liking them and then also enslaving them.
Yeah.
Because this story especially was used in New World's slavery period in the antebellum South to say, hey, you know, try to say that all black people are descended from Ham
Yeah.
and that is their placed to be slaves, that God cursed them to be slaves.
Have you ever heard in your past life, had you ever heard the idea that the mark of Cain was blackness?
Yeah, that's another one that is circulated as well.
Yeah. So, and I mean, I had kind of heard that growing up, but it wasn't anything that anybody really hung their hat on. It wasn't really taught as a thing. It was like something mentioned in passing as, people were trying to
Yeah.
figure out what they're reading. And then I didn't learn until later that that was likely influence from another more modern church that uh,
Yeah.
is LDS. So, but that's a
Oh
whole
yeah,
other ball of
Mormon church.
wax.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. The church, yeah. Yeah, Mormons definitely like Mark of Cain and this, like, that is an issue with them.
yeah.
Their lore isn't my specialty.
Yeah. No,
But
mine
I
neither.
have
And
heard,
I think that I think
yeah,
this tie in to the, Ham and Noah and
yeah,
stuff. I think that really, it's something you can point to rather as the mark of Cain by saying that you're really just kind of making that up. It's not really based on
hmm,
anything that I know of. So,
yeah, absolutely. Like, whenever it comes to what the text actually says and stuff, it has nothing to do with blackness.
yeah,
But later people like came and saw this, and it's like, you know, a whole people group is being cursed.
yeah,
We don't like this other people group, so we're saying that they are part of that curse, and we
right.
want to enslave them.
Yeah,
Um, but regardless of how it was quote unquote misused, how it was applied, what's important for us also to take is that we still have like a curse where a whole people group is being cursed to be slaves.
yeah. Not the individual, not the action,
Yeah.
not how they live their lives or what they believe in, but just because they exist.
Yeah. And again, like if we like take a step back and look at this from like an internal critique of like fundamentalist Christianity, who says that this book is the inspired word of God, that God
Hmm.
had a hand in the writing of this, and that God is also omniscient, he would have known that
Yeah.
how this would have been applied. And
Yep.
we don't see any sort of clarification. We don't see any sort of condemnation of this. Like we have to
Right.
wait until the modern era, like whenever people start to like more critically examining what these things are,
Hmm.
for like just us to figure it out ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I think we're doing a better job, frankly.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of us are. I mean, there's still some
Hmm.
hangers on, but um, and then you have this kind of moving on a little bit later
Yep.
into the story of Hagar.
Yes. This is another one that's very important. So Genesis 16, we have, Abram and Sarai, and, God has promised to Abram that he will, be the father of many nations and all that.
Yeah.
And Sarai, uh, was barren, and she has an Egyptian slave named Hagar. And Sarai, like, gives Hagar to Abram to sleep with and basically use her body to, produce heirs. Um, So a couple things is, the Hebrew word translated slave here is shifa, which is a synonym of amah, both of which refer to female slaves. Shifa may refer specifically to a type of slave, like a handmaiden that is
Hmm.
given to a bride and like supposed to go with her and take care of her and stuff, but still very much an enslaved person.
Yeah.
Um, so Sarah and Abram use Hagar as a surrogate body. It's common practice in the laws of Hammurabi and like just elsewhere where um, enslavers will just take a enslaved girl, woman, and use her body for reproductive purposes.
Right.
In the laws of Hammurabi, which is written earlier than the Bible, we actually see that these enslaved women have some protections, that they could not be sold after giving her master an heir. However, if she seeks to have the same status as her mistress can lower that enslaved woman's status. And children born to the enslaved woman would inherit with the children of the free wife. But if the master does not officially designate the enslaved woman's child as an heir, then the child will not inherit with the free children, but the enslaved woman and her children will be set free. And we actually see this in the text. So for me personally, that seems to mean that the author of Genesis probably knew about these laws in Hammurabi and were writing the story to try like follow these same beats.
Yeah.
And real quick before we continue, it's really important that we acknowledge something. So Hagar, as a slave, cannot consent. She does not have the ability to say no to her master.
Right.
So by any like modern standards, really any ethical standards, in my opinion, this is rape.
Right.
Abram is raping Hagar here.
I mean, if you can't consent and then you say, hey, you're going to be the vessel to, to have a kid, I don't... Technically, could she go along with it? Sure. Did she feel she had the liberty to say no? That's a different question, right?
That's
and
the
one
key.
I can't answer.
Yeah,
so,
if coercion is part of consent, it's not consent.
Right.
Like just straight up. Like that's the reason why whenever it comes to workplace romances or stuff where it's the boss, like, going after one of his underlings and stuff, there's an issue of consent there because he has power over her. How much more so is that whenever it's a master and a slave, a person who has complete ownership of her, has the ability to withhold food, withhold all sorts of things, can inflict physical violence on her if she says no.
Right. Which is different than a workplace thing where, I guess I could quit, or somebody could quit. Not that they should have to. It should be the other way around. But and no one's going to physically assault me if I say no in that case, in modern times anyway, hopefully. But no, totally.
At the very least, if they do, there are legal protections for you.
Right.
Like they're supposed to be prosecuted. In this, there are none.
Yeah. Nope.
Like he has the rights over her body.
Yeah. I can't disagree with you on that one. I mean, it seems pretty cut and dry that if you can't consent, then it's got to be rape.
Yep. So, quick little quote from Jennifer Glancy, scholar in, whenever it comes to slavery in the Bible. We can trace the impact of ancient Christian toleration of sexual exploitation of slaves through interpretations of the biblical figures of Sarah and Hagar, basically saying like later Christian enslavers, like anciently and modern, used this story to justify a master's right to exploit their enslaved people sexually.
Lovely.
Yeah,
that's with sarcasm.
Yeah. So continuing on, unless you have anything else.
Oh no, that's enough.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're not done with Hagar,
I know.
Unfortunately. It's getting worse.
Yeah.
Yay. So he went into Hagar and she conceived. And when she saw that,
he went into her. He just went in and hung out with her. Is that what that means? It's funny. Like I just want to make a quick note that what that means is intercourse. People, intercourse. He literally went into her.
Yeah, very. Honestly, not very subtle euphemism at all.
Yeah, but I mean, again, I just reread something that before you just kind of mentally kind of skip over, like, oh, slaves, curse, whatever. And then this one, he went into her, and you have to really slow down, I think, when you read
Yeah.
these texts, and you have to really chew up what is being said,
Yep.
because otherwise you might skip over that, like, oh, he went into her, so okay, yes, he
That's the
definitely,
important
and you
thing.
see that phrase used later on
Yeah.
in the Bible, so I think it's important to at least highlight. So sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, you're fine. And that's a very important thing to note also is like a lot of people, myself included, whenever I was a Christian, of like, we read through these things, not taking our time, not
Yeah,
thinking critically.
yeah,
And so it's really easy to see, like, keeping that in mind, why when we bring up stuff and Christians often like just say, oh, no, like, it doesn't say that. And it's like, it's because they haven't looked at this critically.
yeah,
Going back to with my degree in biblical studies from college, like I have a whole freaking degree. All the stuff that we're talking about today, I did not learn
yeah.
at college. I
Wow.
learned this reading academic, like critical scholarly sources after I graduated.
Right.
Because when it comes to even Christian universities and stuff, they're not
Hmm.
talking about this.
Quick side note: do you think that's intentional?
Yes.
Yeah, so they don't
Yeah.
want to get into the really, really
Yeah.
nitty gritty
It's not
whenever you.
universally intentional. Like, I'm sure there's definitely cases where some Christian universities or even Christian professors who tend to be a little more willing to get into the nitty gritty than
Yeah.
maybe the institution that they work for.
Hmm.
But in my experience, we did not touch on this. We did not
Yeah.
cover this. And in a lot of instances, if they do touch on this, they might be leaning more toward like trying to teach the people, like the students, the pastors they're training, the apologetics to defend criticisms instead of
Right.
actually critically looking at, okay, what is this saying? What is it
Right.
implying?
Yeah.
And going from there.
Yep.
But anyway, so he went into Hagar and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, she looked with contempt on her mistress. And so this, I think, is like going back to that law of
Hmm.
Hammurabi, where it's like she's seeing that, hey, I'm pregnant now. And now she's like the word using for contempt here is kalal, and it means like, it has a connotation of humbling,
Okay.
of like uh, seeing someone as lesser than.
Hmm.
Um,
Right.
and then Sarai said to Abram, may the wrong done to me be on you. I gave my slave to your embrace. And when she saw that she had conceived, she looked on me with contempt. May the Lord judge between you and me. But Abram said to Sarai, your slave is in your power. Do to her as you please. Then Sarai dealt harshly with her, and she ran away from her. And so this dealt harshly word is anah, which has similar connotations as kalal, like this, like humbling,
Hmm.
but it's often used to describe what one does to an enemy. It's like oppressing, inflict. And so we don't know exactly what happened, but to me, I think it's more than likely that Sarai is inflicting physical violence on
Hmm.
Hagar because of what's going on here.
At the least, it could have been verbal
Yeah,
abuse,
at the very least.
and the psychological implications from that.
Yeah,
Uh, but we're talking about the Bible, and they
yeah,
seem to like a lot of violence. So
yeah. I mean, really,
the
just the
writers
ancient
do.
Near East
So
in general.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
like it's not just the Bible. It's not just like we're
Oh hell, it's
nitpicking.
humans in general.
Yeah, yeah,
We're just
humans in general back then, like
yeah.
as sure as atheists and like atheist activists, we are criticizing the Bible because people are using this and
Right.
saying, "Hey, this is the moral standard that you need to be living by," and trying to take away people's rights by citing the Bible.
Yeah.
But like all we're doing is saying like, look, this is a historical text. This was written a long ass time ago
Hmm.
by people who lived very differently from us. And we don't accept their morals generally.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, if we can acknowledge that, look, this thing endorses slavery, this thing endorses beating people, like your children, your slaves, and we recognize, like, that's not good, we should be able to also take that same process and be like, okay, so we also probably shouldn't be using this to say that gay people shouldn't live together, shouldn't have loving
Mm-hmm.
relationships, and, you know, women should have equal rights and stuff like that. Like, we
Right.
should be able to acknowledge that this just isn't a good text to be just taking uncritically and applying to
Right.
our lives.
Right. Yeah, and you can use it. I mean, if you can justify your behavior against someone just because of what they look like, well, then we can just start running down the list of things that, oh, X person has this wrong with them, and I think that I should be able to oppress them or treat them
Yeah.
poorly for whatever reason, and then find a way to justify it.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
say, oh,
we see it all the time,
we do.
like, all the
Yeah.
time. And oftentimes, it's exactly what Christians do. It's like they see something that they don't like, they try to find a justification for disliking it in the Bible, and they run with it, whether
Yeah.
it's applicable or not.
And
Kind of like whenever they, you know, oh, they don't like pronouns, you know, like people
right.
using they, them. And
Yeah.
so they say, oh, well, this demon here in the New Testament uses they, them. That means that they're demonic. And it's like, okay, no, never mind. It's not one demon, it's a plurality of demons
right.
inside that
Yeah.
person.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
it's ridiculous.
Well, with Hagar, and whatever punishment it
Yeah.
was, one can probably assume that it wasn't. It wasn't so much that it would have not found. How do I put this? It wasn't so bad that Abraham would have said, "Whoa, you went too far." Right? I mean, he does say like this. She's yours to do with, right? I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah, you
you
have the
get
right to
to.
do with her what you want, is
Yeah.
essentially what Abram is saying. Like, you do what you think is right.
Right.
And I think it's also important to note, like, even though, once again, this story likely didn't actually happen,
Yeah.
but it still reflects how they thought. And of
The
course, from a
the
Christian
attitudes.
perspective, they think that this did happen. So anyway,
Well, and yeah, if you're
yeah,
a literalist and you're looking back at this, you're saying, oh well, that is how it happened,
yep,
and we have to reconcile that somehow.
yeah. But so Hagar is an enslaved woman who is freshly pregnant, and she runs away from her home
Mm-hmm.
where everyone she knows is there. I doubt she has food. She doubt she has water. She has no shelter. Like, whatever was causing her to run away had to be bad.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
it,
you're not going to run away from having everything for you as far as the basics, right?
yeah,
Food, clothing, shelter. You're not going to run away from that unless what you're running away from is worse.
yeah. Not to mention, like, in this context, how her station is right now as being the mother to the heir of Abram.
Mm-hmm.
She's got it made. Like, whenever it comes to like her enslaved status,
Yeah.
like, other than being freed, there's not much else that she could hope for.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, like, what Sarah had, like, she had to have done something bad.
Yeah.
And I mean, the text itself is using a word that denotes harshness in a time when what we would consider harsh and what they would
Yeah.
consider harsh is very different.
Very different. Yeah.
But anyway, continuing on. The angel of the Lord found her by a spring of water in the wilderness, the spring on the way to Shur. And he said, Hagar, slave of Sarai, where have you come from and where are you going? She said, I'm running away from my mistress Sarai. The angel of the Lord said to her, return to your mistress and submit to her. So, we have the angel of the Lord, a servant of Yahweh, reaffirms her status as a mere slave.
Right.
and sends her back to submit to her abusers. Sends her back to the man who raped her, sends her back to her mistress who was abusing her.
Uh-huh.
And it gets worse. So word for submit is honestly, this one I'm not as good at. Vihit ani, which has the root of ana, what Sarai was doing to her.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
so it's basically saying, like, the angel's using the same word of, like, what Sarai is doing to her. And basically,
So the root of that, the submission part also falls into the harshness of it.
it's saying, like, you need to humble, you need to base yourself to Sarai. You need to submit yourself to that abusive treatment.
Mm-hmm.
So the part that gets worse. So some scholars argue that malach, the word that means angel, is an interpolation, is an addition to the text. Because later scribes were uncomfortable with the idea that Yahweh is personally, like, going around and doing things, that it makes more sense for him to have servants. And so if they are correct, it means Yahweh himself is coming down and treating Hagar as a slave and sending her back to her abusers.
I mean, either way you look at it, I mean, if it's a messenger of God, then how would it not be coming straight from the big guy himself, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I just think that, like, the acknowledgement of, like, more than likely, like, it was just Yahweh himself. Like, there's no wiggle room in this. Like, God himself is acknowledging Abram and Sarai's rights over Hagar and saying, look, I don't care that you've been abused. You need to go back.
But she gets a good deal out of it, right? She gets to have her offspring multiply.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, so that's worth it right there. I mean, what's a few beatings per day if you're going to be, the matriarch of a of a new line.
I mean, that's more than likely the authors, like, what they were thinking of, like, why they, because we see later, we're not going to get too much into this, but we see later, like, what happens is that Sarai has her own child and she wants Ishmael to be disinherited. And because he's disinherited, he, like, Hagar and Ishmael are freed, just like in the laws of Hammurabi, like, dictate. And it's like they're out on their own. They got nothing. And I guess, like, the author of the text is, like, saying, well, we need to make sure that, like, it doesn't look too harsh. So God comes back down. It's like, I'm going to bless you too. Don't worry about it.
Right. I feel like there's a side note to this about capitalism / maybe hustle culture, and about, like, listen, it's all worth it because we're going to give you more shit. And you see this with Job too, right? I mean, Job is like, well, he was restored to whatever. It's like, no, he lost, like, everything. Just because you got a new version of everything doesn't mean that you were restored to what you had before. You just got, like, version 2.0, right? And the same thing is happening here, where it's like, okay, you're going to have to endure whatever she throws at you, but don't worry, we're going to make up for it. It's going to be fantastic. You're going to love it.
Absolutely. So, like, it's just, it is truly messed up, like, expecting people to, like, put up with abuse. For scraps.
Exactly. Right. For scraps. Yeah.
A couple more notes before we move on. So this passage is used by pro-slavery Christians. There was a pastor guy. I need to look more into him, but he seems like a character. Lovely person. Frederick A. Ross. He lived during the antebellum South. And he wrote, like, he was a huge defender of slavery in the Americas, and he used the Bible to defend it. But he uses this passage to defend returning fugitive slaves, saying, like, well, God returned Hagar to Abram and Sarai, so we need to make sure that, you know, black slaves that are fleeing from their southern masters need to be returned as well.
Yeah, I just looked him up real quick. The title of his book was "Slavery as Ordained of God."
Yep.
So with a title like that, whew,
Yeah.
okie dokie then.
Oh yeah.
Tell me how you really feel.
And he also points out that slaveholding did not prevent God from blessing Abraham in all things. Like, at the end of Abram's story, it says that God blessed him in all things. And so pro-slavery Christians have used this to say, look, like, if God didn't like slavery, why did he bless slaveholders?
Yeah.
And, like, while obviously we agree that, pro-slavery people are pieces of inhuman shit, like,
yeah,
fuck them, they're right whenever it comes to what the Bible is saying.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's not hard to figure out that if you can get very cheap, if not free labor, then you're going to be rewarded just from a pure economic standpoint.
Yeah.
It doesn't cost anything to produce or to have laborers, and then you're still able to produce things, whether it be a harvest or buildings or the White House. It doesn't matter, right? So
absolutely,
there is some truth in that you can be rewarded for that, but is that right? That's the question. That's what we're talking about, right?
Yes, absolutely. So. It's like, yeah, you're good on you. You have all this free labor. Just like with the billionaires today, it's like they might not have slave labor, but they are still exploiting their workers. They're not paying them living wages. And it's like, yeah, sure, you're the richest people in the world. Congratulations. And meanwhile, all of these people are suffering. They're struggling to get by. They're having to, use government welfare. They're having, to do GoFundMes to pay for their medical bills whenever there's plenty of resources to go around.
Yeah.
It's, messed up. Anyway.
I wrestle with that a little bit with the idea of modern society and if we're slaves. So I would have to say no, just because of what I said earlier about we do have the freedom to just up and leave. I'm not saying it would be easy to just quit something, and there are consequences to any action. So if I just walk in and I say, you know what, I'm just done with this job because you're abusing me, I still have to figure out a way to put food on the table, because the reality is our society is driven in such a way that I don't get a lot of handouts, and even the handouts you do get from the government aren't a lot, admittedly. So I just wrestle with the idea of slavery in modern times, but I do realize that there are absolutely people that are still being held more like this as far as slavery today. So
it's important. I suppose it is an important thing to stop and talk about that, because that is a common thing that people will say. Is like, oh well, like I even had someone say this, like I think yesterday, arguing on threads about slavery in the Bible, and they said, oh well, your job has enslaved you, and like I gave this exact same answer as you did. It's like, I'm free to leave. I have legal protections against being physically, sexually, verbally abused. Like, it is not the same. It is important to note, like, that doesn't mean it's not exploitative. It doesn't mean that, things can't be better, but we are not enslaved.
Right. And you don't typically go get an education or learn a skill and learn how to add value to become a slave. Usually the slave is taken by force. Like actual slavery. Like, you don't get a say in the matter. I don't think, I'd like to be a slave blacksmith, and so I'm going to really learn how to do that kind of stuff so I can be a good slave.
Yeah.
That's different, so it is a choice. We do have choices. So, but
Correct.
like you said, it could be exploitive. You know what I mean?
Exploitative.
We all have words we struggle with, and that one's mine.
Yep.
But yes, clearly a difference. I don't see how you could read into it any other way unless you're just lying to yourself. So,
yeah, absolutely. They're wanting
thing.
to excuse what the Bible says. Like they're wanting to uncritically just dismiss any criticisms of like the Bible and any possible way to justify it, to make it not as bad, to cling on to this idea that the Bible's true. The Bible is good. God is good.
Mm-hmm.
They'll do. And it's not that they're necessarily bad people or dumb people. It's that kind of like what we talked about last time of their identity is wrapped up in this.
Mm-hmm.
And so criticizing something that is core to their identity, that gives them hope, that gives them meaning, triggers a fight or flight response. Like it triggers that, and they're not able to think critically when they're in that headset, and they're going to try to do whatever they can to protect that thing that gives them meaning, gives them community.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to get people out of that.
I don't want to take away from anything else here, so if we need to stay here, that's fine. But I do want to make a note that at this point, we don't have any like hard and fast written rules from Yahweh at this point. But I'm sure as far as like, don't do that, don't own people as cattle, that type of thing.
Yeah.
But I'm sure he clears all that up, right? Whenever he gets a chance to actually present something that you could say is set in stone. He probably gets a chance to clear that up, right?
Oh yeah,
that's
absolutely.
A segue.
That yeah. Thank you for the segue. Because that's another thing that apologists often say. It's like, well, all these stories, we intentionally talked about the stories first. All these stories are just describing slavery. It's not prescribing, which
right.
I think it's fair to note, just in the stories that we talked about, that's a bit of a silly thing to say.
Mm-hmm.
Because even though it's just describing, we have God like coming down in person, stopping a fugitive slave and saying, hey, go back to your abuser.
Right.
Like, how can you say like that's not God endorsing this? How is that God
seems
not
pretty prescriptive, right? Not descriptive. He didn't say, hey, you're a slave. Sorry about that. He said, go back.
Yeah. And he doesn't admonish
stick
Abram.
with it.
He doesn't, if anything, he's admonishing Hagar for running away, for not putting up with her abuse.
Well, that's because women were treated as property, but that's a whole other. Subject.
Actually, gonna go to that.
Maybe it's tied into that. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, what's the difference from? I guess there are slight differences if you have rules that have different rules for men and women, slaves. But if you just see anybody as property, there's not a huge discrepancy there.
Yeah,
be it because you're a woman or because you're a slave.
Yeah, that is one thing that I'm also wrestling with, wanting to do more research on. But definitely, women are considered property in this time period, and we'll talk a little bit more on that as we go forward. So going from these descriptions of slavery, we're going to go into the law codes. And real quick thing, so law codes were common pieces of ancient literature. We've already cited and talked about the laws of Hammurabi. That's another law code that is earlier than what we're going to be talking about.
Old school.
Yeah. And more than likely, the biblical law codes were drawing from and sometimes almost copying the laws of Hammurabi.
Yeah.
And just changing a few things. But these scholars don't think that they were actually enforced in the time, that these were like propaganda pieces for the king. There were things that like the elite, the literate elite, were like talking about what ought to happen. And sometimes people, like the more sophisticated apologists, would be like, oh, well, why are you even talking about these if they weren't enforced? And it's like, well, because one, it's still talking about what they thought ought to happen.
Yeah.
And two, fundamentalists still think that this is the word of God that ought to be enforced legally.
Right. Definitely.
So it's
Today,
worth
actually.
criticizing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and another little apologist spotlight real quick is that, that apologists say is that they'll say, like, and wherever I did my little survey on Threads of like, hey, what's the best argument that says the Old Testament did not endorse slavery? Inevitably, and this happened, people will say, well, the Exodus story. God freed the slaves.
Right.
And, it's also important to note that, the abolitionist movement was also driven by the Exodus story. Like they took inspiration from it. Nat Turner, a enslaved man who led, I think, one of the biggest revolts on U.S. soil, was inspired by the Exodus story. But it's important to put the story within its context. God is not abolishing slavery for all time here. Rather, quote from Hector Avalos, the Exodus story in its larger scope is more a story of group privileging, wherein a particular group is entitled to liberation, the Israelites, but not others, the Canaanites. The group privileging rationale is analogous to the rationale used in New World slavery, wherein one group, white Europeans, felt entitled to liberty, but this did not mean that they felt liberty was owed to others.
Right.
God is not condemning slavery in general in the Exodus story. He is condemning the enslavement of his chosen people by foreigners.
Yeah. Let's get into that.
Yeah. Because right after this Exodus story, we see the 10 Commandments. First off, you shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, male or female slave, ox, donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. So in the 10 Commandments that Christians are trying to put up in all the schools, assumes that male and female slaves are among the possessions of the Israelites.
Dude, it goes back to what I said earlier, but it bothers me about how many times you read something. I mean, we've all had the 10 Commandments beat over our head at some point. I think everybody is familiar with it. Hell, there's been a movie made about it. Charlton Heston, thank you very much.
Several movies.
Yeah, several, yeah. And yeah, you can't get around the fact that it's in the 10 Commandments. If you truly look at the 10 Commandments as like, listen, if you need a short primer on how to interact in society, this is it. This is the Cliff Notes version of everything else. It still went out of its way to include slavery. And
instead of including a condemnation on owning people, it's assuming that you will.
Oh, excellent point. Yes. Just assume that you will. Well, that's just how we do things. We have slaves.
And side note, did you notice what's also among the possessions?
Let's see. Let me, I've got it pulled up here. Covet your neighbor's house, your neighbor's wife, male or female slave, ox, donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. I mean, literally.
Wives. Wives. Wives are part of the possessions of the neighbor that you are not allowed to covet.
Oh, so right. Once again, okay. Good call. Yes.
Showing
that it's property. I mean, we're talking about possessions, anything that belongs to your neighbor. And
so women are considered possessions here. So going on, Exodus 21, verses 2 to 11. So part Exodus is this part of Exodus, part of the covenant code, and is the earliest of the laws on slavery in the Hebrew Bible. We will be touching on Deuteronomy and Leviticus later, and they are essentially taking what's in Exodus and expanding it, renegotiating it. And we'll also see that they're contradictory in a lot of ways. But this is the earliest. When you buy a male Hebrew slave, he shall serve 6 years, but in the 7th he shall go out free without debt. So a lot of apologists will, like, if you bring up biblical slavery, they'll immediately say, oh, it's indentured servitude. Which, for one, is just a polite way of saying debt slavery.
It really is, because an indentured servant can't just leave. Can't just be like, hey, I think I'm done here. I think I'm going to move to New York. That didn't happen. So you're still a slave.
Yes. And we should also know, like, who it's reserved for. It is reserved for Israelite men in Exodus.
Yeah, it's very clear.
Yeah. The Hebrew word translated slave is eved, and it can refer to either servant or slave. Some translations will say, like, oh, this is a bond servant, whatever. Context clues is what helps decide whether it's talking about a servant or a slave. In this instance, we see, like, they're bought. So if it's eved that is being bought, it's more than likely talking about a slave.
Yeah.
And they're freed on the 7th year. So they work for 6 years and they're freed. If we compare that to the laws of Hammurabi 117, enslaved people are actually freed after only 3 years of service there.
Wow.
So a lot of times Christians will say, oh, well, the Hebrew Bible was so much more humane than the laws around them. So much better. And it's like, right here we see that it's actually a regression. Like, the laws of Hammurabi is more humane if we look at it from the perspective of an enslaved person.
And I don't have the Hammurabi code up, but is there a distinction made between types of peoples? Like, in verse 2 here in Exodus 21, it clearly says male Hebrew slave. So it's making a very clear a description of what we're talking about. And then,
in 117, I don't think so off the top of my head. That is something I can look at another time. But we will see later that in other codes, like there's, like I said, with Deuteronomy and Leviticus, it's a little different. So some of them could be drawing a little bit more specifically from laws of Hammurabi. A lot of times they're changing what's there. But yeah. So what is going on here? Sorry. 1 second. I apologize.
We're going to take a quick break and have this is a sponsor break, brought to you by no one. Okay.
Yeah. All the people who want to sponsor, a talk about slavery.
I'm sure most people don't want to touch that with
something came up on my computer and I was trying to, like, get it to go away so I could see my notes. All right. So anyway, continue on. If he comes in single, he shall go out single. If he comes in married, then his wife shall go out with him. If his master gives him a wife and she bears him sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall be her master's, and he shall go out alone. So, one quick note. I thought about not going into this, but it's important for later. If a man... It says, if a man has a wife, quote unquote, like air quotes, she leaves with him. If his enslaver gives him a wife, she and any children she has with him stay with the enslaver as chattel slaves. They are permanent slaves.
Right.
So debt slavery, this freedom, does not apply to women. It does not apply to children of enslaved women. But wife here, the Hebrew word is isha, and it's just the generic name for woman.
Okay.
In Hebrew, there is not a word to designate like a wife from a woman.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, that's something I learned from Dr. Jennifer Bird's Marriage in the Bible. So
Yeah.
anytime that you're reading through the Hebrew Bible and you see the word wife, you can go in and look at what the word is. It's just saying woman.
Mm-hmm.
And the husband word for husband here is Baal. And it literally means master or lord.
Oh, yeah.
So a better translation, I'm adapting this from Robert Alter's, is if he came by himself, he shall go out by himself. If he was a master to a woman, his woman shall go out with him. But if his master should give him a woman and she bears him sons or daughters, the woman and her children shall be her masters, and she shall go out, and he shall go out alone.
Very centered around property.
Yeah,
There's really
absolutely.
no other
Like,
way around that.
yeah, it's in its historical context, it's clearly like giving protections for the property rights of for both the debt slave. So, like, if he's coming in and he's got his property, his woman,
Mm-hmm.
the enslaver can't take her and like keep her. But
Yeah.
if he comes in alone and the master gives him a woman, then that woman stays the master's property. Which just pause and like I think it's important to recognize like just how fucked up that is of how
This is a
they're
hard
treating
chapter,
women.
dude. Like, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, anytime, you read this and you just like, it should give you pause.
yeah,
That just how difficult it is to fully wrap your head around it whenever you slow down and really read what the text says. It really is only giving any kind of status to basically two people, the master, and then secondly, a little lower, a male Hebrew that gets lucky after after what, 6 years. Yeah, on the
yes,
seventh year he'll go free. So and that's it. Everybody else, yeah, you guys are shit out of luck.
yep. And so this is sex slavery. Um, like a definition of
Yeah,
sex slavery from Cambridge is a person who's forced to perform sex acts and who's not free to leave the place where they're being kept or to stop the work that they are being forced to do.
right.
Um, both the Israel debt slave and the woman his master provides him with are being used for their reproductive capacities to provide the enslaver more slaves because the children are going to stay his property.
Yeah.
That's his incentive of giving this debt slave a woman is like, hey, whatever children they make, they're mine. There's furthering my slave population, my workforce.
And that's only carried forward even still today, like this rise of these idiot talking heads that talk about the only real reason to have sex is to reproduce,
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah,
And this idea about women, and like that's their greatest gift or something like that. I mean, that's just it's all tied
which
into sexual slavery.
yeah, which that goes back to, I mean, definitely back to here, but also enforced in the New Testament, which we can talk about another time.
Yeah, sure.
Of like how, like just how much even the New Testament is reinforcing this idea of like women are property. Their role is to be, honestly, straight up how the New Testament talks about it. It's like their role is to be penetrated
Yeah.
and produce children.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but anyway, going on. But and because this is a fun part here. But if the slave declares, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go out a free person. Then his master shall bring him before God. He shall be brought to the doorpost, and his master shall pierce his ear with an awl, and he shall serve him for life.
It almost starts off good, doesn't it? it's like, you know what? I've realized that it's rough out there,
Yeah.
and it reminds me of the Shawshank Redemption, where the older guy, he's like, I've been in here all my life. I really don't know how to do anything else. I might as well just stay here. And then
Yeah.
ultimately, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the movie in the last 30 years, he ends up ending his own life because he can't hack it outside of his prison, that he knew all of his life. And it
Yeah.
starts off great. It's like, I love my master, my wife, and my children. I will not go out a free person. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to tough it out because I want to stick with these people. And you're like, cool. And so the master shall bring him before God, and he shall be brought to the door, and they'll just talk about it. No, they pierce his ear
Yeah.
like he's a cow. I
Yes.
mean,
Exactly.
as
Like,
someone who grew up in the Midwest, I've been around cows a lot, and they have those little tags,
mhm.
that they, like, oh, well, that's number 102 over there, don't want
Yeah.
to give him a name. But yeah, awful.
Yeah.
Just
Marking him as a permanent chattel slave.
yeah,
Absolutely. And I think it's good to also like pause and like point out, it's like, because, apologists will say, like, oh, well, I mean, he could have waited for the woman and the children to like be free. And it's like, no, they're here for life.
yeah.
And it's like, but also like I love my master thing. It's like, I'm sorry. Like, there's no way in hell I could say that about any employer I have, let
hmm
alone someone who owned me as
Yeah,
property. Like,
yeah,
I, like,
yeah,
this is obviously coercive. Like, it's saying, I think the emphasis really should be on my woman and my children. It's like, if he wants to stay with the children that he has, if he
yeah,
caught feelings for the woman that he was sleeping with and he wants to stay with them, he has no other choice but to submit to permanent chattel slavery, to sacrifice his freedom
yeah.
forever.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um so going on, because we got more in Exodus, just keeps going, keeps getting better.
Just keeps
Um
getting better. Yeah.
keeps getting better. Uh when a man sells his daughter as a slave, she shall not go out as the male slaves do.
Well, of course.
Yeah. It's like, so
Everyone knows that. Jeez.
so we see here that it's not just that like a man can sell himself into debt slavery to pay for debts if he's financially
Yeah.
in trouble.
Yeah.
A man is able to just sell his family members to like his daughters, his sons, but specifically here his daughter, into debt slavery. And that she is not, like, despite this being debt slavery, she is not freed with the male slaves.
No.
She stays permanently. And as we continue on, we get an idea of like why that is, what's going on here. Um, so if she does not please her master, who, sorry, had some glitching going on here. If she does not please her master, who designated her for himself, um, then, gosh, sorry, I do not know what's going on. Sorry, if he designates, sorry, if she does not please her master who designated her for himself, then he shall let her be redeemed. He shall have no rights to sell her to a foreign people, since he has dealt unfairly with her. So, designates for himself. Sometimes people try to say, like, this is marriage. Like, she's being sold into marriage, which, one, we should recognize that's gross to begin
hmm
with. Like,
Yeah.
selling your daughter to marriage, like you're treating her as property.
Yeah.
But this is not marriage. She's being sold into concubine as a sex slave.
hmm
Um, and he's saying, like, if after she's sold to him, if he does not, if he decides he doesn't really like her anymore, like after he's already done used her, that he can let her dad or whoever buy her back, essentially. And that he has no right to sell her to a foreign people.
Yeah.
Which implies that he's allowed to sell her off to other Israelites.
That's true. It is pretty explicit with the word foreign. And I realize that there's more discussion of this that happens.
Yeah.
Differentiating Hebrew from, literally anyone else.
Oh, yeah. We'll get there. Going a little bit further, if he designates her for his son, he shall deal with her as if a daughter. And like some people said, oh, like, see how much this is protecting her. And it's literally just saying if he gives her to his son, he can't also be raping her, essentially. That his son now has sexual rights over her, but he can't.
Well, I'm glad we cleared that up.
Oh, yeah. Jeez. It's like, is there protections? Yes. Technically. Still fucked up.
Still fucked up.
Going on, if he takes another wife. Now, remember what I said earlier about what this word actually is.
Right.
To himself, he shall not diminish the food, clothing, or marital rights for the first wife. Marital rights is also not a correct word. If he does not do these things for her, she shall go without debt, without payment of money. So, wife, again, it's Isha. It's saying if he takes another woman, whether it's a concubine, slave, or wife, honestly, I think in this, that he can't withhold food from her. He can't withhold clothing. He still has to take care of her, which, to be fair, historical context, this is protections for her. So there is that. And if he does not provide for her, that she is to go free. But
she doesn't get any restitution.
Yeah,
at the
no
same
restitution
time.
whatsoever.
So,
and
she's been a slave all this time, and now she gets to go free. No debt. That's good, But also, you're starting over from ground zero. You just sent out into the world with nothing, to get started with.
Which is important to note, like the historical context of this, because the reason why, more than likely, female debt slaves are not freed in this instance is a bit of a protection for them, because they're being used sexually. And in this context, if a woman is already used sexually, she's used goods. She cannot be sold off to another husband, or at the very least, it's really difficult for her to.
Yeah.
And so she's being freed with no dowry, no means of her taking care of herself or getting another husband. She is, to be quite frankly, fucked in this situation. Yeah. So even the protections that are given to her are just really not doing that much for her.
I mean, it's really a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation here. There's no good outcome for the woman, other than, well, at least you're not a slave anymore.
Yeah,
that's about it.
Which, to be honest, in this context, it's arguably better for her to be enslaved than for her to be out, like to be freed with absolutely no food, no clothing, no nothing. So, sure, it's
arguably better in the way that, would you rather have your food that you were going to eat for lunch a little rotten, or like really rotten, and then you can't still have the lunch, like your food's got mold and stuff growing on it? Is a little bit of mold okay, or it's really really awful? So it is marginally better in that sense.
Marginally better in that. But at the same time, it's basically saying, like, if you don't want to be absolutely fucked, you need to please your master.
Right. Yes, there's implying just obey. We just need you to shut up and obey.
Yeah. It's gross. All right. Anyway, going on to the next law code on slavery. Deuteronomy 15:1, 4 and 5, and then 7 and 18. We're not going to read all this.
Okay.
But I encourage anyone listening to this to do so. Because, in particular, the first bit of it emphasizes how Yahweh is telling the Israelites that they need to take care of their neighbor. They need to take care of the poor. It says, there will, however, be no one in need among you. Which is a very utopian, like, optimistic view of things. And God is saying, or the author writing in God's name is saying, I will bless you. I will make sure you are taken care of. What you need to do is take care of the poor around you, which, to be honest, like, my leftist heart loves this aspect of it, of this idea of, like, you need to not worry about taking care of yourself. You need to make sure that everybody around you is taken care of.
Yeah.
And the reason why I emphasize this is that one thing that apologists will constantly say is, well, what could they possibly do with debt slavery? Like, they didn't have welfare. They didn't have government welfare. They didn't have other means of taking care of their poor. And it's like, motherfuckers, it's right here. Like,
yeah.
it's saying right here.
Yeah.
God is commanding you to take care of the poor among you, and that he will bless you if you do so. That you shouldn't worry about your own wealth, your own means. You need to just take care of people.
What's the exact verse on that one?
That would be Deuteronomy 15, and it looks like 4 to 5, and then I skipped a little bit, 7 to 11. Didn't skip it for any, like, nefarious reasoning, just
4 specifically. There will, however, be
if we
no
had more
one
time, I was going to read this whole thing, but we don't. But also one thing to note is, like, Jesus quotes this in Matthew 26:11, for you always have the poor with you, but you will not always have me. Putting it in the context of this is that Deuteronomy is saying you will always have the poor, so you need to always be giving liberally to them.
Right.
Like, you need to always be taking care of them. And God is commanding Israelites to take care of one another and promising that he will bless them for their generosity. And if we continue on now, verses 12 to 15, it does say, like, if a member of your community, whether a Hebrew man or a Hebrew woman, so this is interesting. We're seeing a change of Exodus 21, like, is sold to you and works for you for 6 years. In the 7th year, you shall set that person free. And when you send a male, it says male slave. Robert Alter, like, argues that grammatically, even though it's in the masculine, it's applying to both male and female slaves here.
Okay. Like, what's his reasoning for that?
It's the grammar. It's like, it's just the part of speech that it's masculine, but it's like, it doesn't explicitly say male slave. It just says, like, he, like, but it's grammatically, like, he's arguing it applies to both.
I could get behind that. I mean, for the longest time, I mean, as a former journalism person, you might refer to he, meaning, I realize this is a little antiquated nowadays, but, you might refer to he and meaning you're encompassing both he and she, but I acknowledge that there's a lot of patriarchy going on there that is just continue. That's just part of my journey, right? As I start to learn more about look at our society and how we've done things, and about how we always attribute it back to the dude.
Yeah, like, I will say, like, it's possible it's only meaning male slaves are freed here, or male slave, like, stuff going on here. But I'm willing to be charitable for a couple of reasons. One, Deuteronomy seems to be very, relatively speaking, progressive in this. And two, normally in the text, if it's saying, hey, you do this to this set of people, and then the people that are not included in this is how you treat them. There isn't
Right.
that here. It's just, so I think it makes sense that it's lumping both in. But anyways,
Yeah.
it says like after they work for 6 years, on the 7th year, you shall set that person free. And when you send them out from you a free person, you shall not send them out empty handed. Provide
Right.
for him liberally out of your flock, your fleshing, your threshing floor, and your winepress, thus giving to him some of the bounty with which the Lord your God has blessed you. Basically, the things that this slave has been working to like produce for you, give him a
Mm-hmm.
portion of it. So,
Yeah.
and it says, remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and the Lord your God redeemed you. For this reason, I lay this command upon you today. So freedom is extended to male and female debt slaves here. And possibly the reason why there's a difference is that Exodus 21 is talking about female debt slaves that are used sexually, while this
Mm-hmm.
one is workers in general. Like, they're not
Right.
necessarily used sexually.
Right.
Provisions are given to them, and this is likely to prevent the debtor from falling back into debt slavery.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a huge progression from
It
Exodus
is a
21.
huge progression, and it's one that if you were going to argue for this type of teaching mentality or
Mm-hmm.
whatever in modern society, then I kind of think we should be doing more of that. Like, let's say you go to prison. Well, whenever you get out, uh, I realize that a lot of times there's some in between, like a halfway house. I mean, I did
Mm-hmm.
know a guy that went to prison because he couldn't control his temper, and then whenever he got out, he did spend time at a halfway house. So at least he didn't have to worry about
Yeah.
shelter, but he still had to go use that as an opportunity to find a job, and then you're like coming up with food and all that other kind of stuff. Well, here it says, well, give of your bounty. I mean,
Yeah.
you've got considerably more generous than modern times, I think, once
Yeah.
you're out of that type of slavery.
Yeah. In a way, absolutely. Like, it's what's advocating for here is like very generous.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that's important to also like point out one thing that is a little interesting though is like the reason why God gives for why you should be treating your fellow Israelites this way is he appeals to himself as Israel's redeemer. And redeemer is like freeing someone, like kind of what we said before with the woman who is to be redeemed if her master doesn't like her, is a buying back. God is portraying himself as Israel's rightful enslaver.
Well,
Yeah, he bought them back out of slavery. It's like, I'm your slave master. You need to remember,
yeah,
like, I'm commanding you to do this. So there is a little bit of still,
yeah,
but
yeah. I didn't say it was
um,
perfect. I just said it was,
yeah,
a
oh
little
yeah,
bit better.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm just touching it because this is what we're doing, is we're breaking it down
Oh
and
yeah,
showing everything.
definitely.
And then going on verses 16 and 17, we see again that like the option of a debt slave to become a permanent chattel slave if they so choose. It is interesting that it takes out the loophole of, or like the coercion aspect of, well, I gave you a significant other that you could have kids with, and if you want to stay with them, well, you got to submit to chattel slavery. It's just straight
Right.
up saying, like, if you want to stay, fine, you're going to still be marked as chattel.
Mm-hmm.
Repeats the, you shall take an awl and thrust it through the earlobe into the door, and he shall be your slave forever. You shall do the same with regard to your female slave. That's the other aspect, is at the
Yeah,
end.
it's definitely definite difference.
Yeah. Um, and just to land at home with this last bit with verse 18, do not consider it a hardship when you send them out from you free persons, because for 6 years they have given you services with wages worth the wages of hired laborers. and the Lord your God will bless you in all you do. Basically saying you benefited from their labor. You saved money because you were helping them.
Yeah.
So you need to give them, give them help. And if you do so, I will bless you.
And I mean, you're so right. Within the context, this does sound better.
Yes.
I mean, because it's an acknowledgement at the very least of like, listen, you got free labor. So, don't be put off by the fact that, you have to adhere to this law and let them go. Yeah, because you got a lot out of them. I mean, got yourself blessed. I mean, you had a slave.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm rolling my eyes here on that one.
Well,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if we took Deuteronomy here in isolation, if this was all there was, I would concede that it wasn't that bad.
Right.
Like that compared to like a lot of other things, not that bad.
It sounds like it has more structure for fairness, or the potential for fairness, but
we don't see like any like really explicit forms of like abuse and stuff being said here. Put in the context of everything else we'll see, though, they're still a slave.
Yeah. And I don't know how to read this whenever you think about it from a literal point of view. Do you see this as a contradiction, or would you end up seeing this as an evolution? And
that's the other thing is like, this is a clear contradiction because like how fundamentalists usually read this, and let me know if you were taught different, is like all of these law codes were given to Moses at the exact same time by God. So this is a clear contradiction if we read it like that. If we read it from a historical critical perspective, where these are evolutions, these are like other scribes coming back later, seeing earlier laws and saying, I want to tweak this.
Right. Yeah.
Like it makes sense. That's probably what happened. Reading it from a literalist, fundamentalist perspective, it's a contradiction. Like it
is a contradiction. Yeah. And if you're approaching it from, literally, I don't know how you can reconcile it. Because then once you start getting into like, let's say you did say that it was an evolution, that God changed his mind, so to speak. Well, but then you have other verses that talk about that God doesn't change his mind. So again, contradictions. We could probably spend all day on contradictions.
Yeah, it's it's one of those things where like if you're approaching the text from a fundamentalist, literalist lens, it's not going to make sense. It just isn't. You have to ignore so much or read into it things that are not there in order to make it fit.
Right.
But if you approach it from not looking at this as a text inspired by God, and if you read it from what critical scholars think is going on instead of church tradition, it's easy to see how it makes sense.
Yeah.
That, these are just people coming back later and saying, I didn't like those parts. I'm going to change it. Yeah, that happens all the time.
Yeah.
Like, makes sense.
And this is where apologists kind of telling themselves, I think, whenever they might use this, maybe you use this, passage and then ignore the other one. And then at some point you've got to reconcile it at the very least in your own mind. You've got to figure out a way that you're going to make this work. And I don't have a way to do that because I don't believe contradictions can exist. I mean, if it's a contradiction, then one of the two isn't true, or more isn't true, right? So, I'll leave that for the fundies to, to chew on a little bit.
Yeah, the only advice I have for them is like, you need to abandon that doctrine of inerrancy. You're shooting yourself in the foot. Like, it's just indefensible. Indefensible. Getting cotton mouth. All right, so after we had that high point, let's continue. We're going to have an amazing low point.
Okay, where are we going
it's
now?
just down all the way from here. All right, Leviticus 25, 39 to 46. So this is, again, after Exodus, potentially after Deuteronomy, but it's, again, they're taking those earlier law codes and changing it to fit like what they think ought to be going on. If any who are dependent on you become so impoverished that they sell themselves to you, you shall not make them serve as slaves. So this is talking about, fellow Israelites who become impoverished. It says, like, yeah, they sell themselves to you, but you are not going to treat them like slaves. They shall remain with you as hired or bound laborers. You should treat them like they're hired workers. They shall serve with you until the year of Jubilee. Then they and their children with them shall go out from your authority. So we see a little bit of a progression from Exodus where, like, them and their children, they leave. Like, there's no holding on to the children. They all go free.
Mm-hmm.
They shall go back to their own family and return to their ancestral property. For they are my servants. I quibble with that word servants because guess what word that is?
It's the same one used for slaves?
Eved. Yep.
Yeah.
Whom I bought out of the land of Egypt. They shall not be sold as slaves as are sold. You shall not rule over them with harshness, but shall fear your God. So, a couple things. Jubilee is, we see in Leviticus 25:10 that every 50 years, a Jubilee is proclaimed to all inhabitants, where all debts of Israelites are erased.
Right.
And Israelite debt for slaves are to be freed. So compare that to Exodus 21 and Deuteronomy, where they're freed after 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now we see, oh no, you're not freed until after 49 years of labor. That's like your entire life.
Yeah.
And some people try to read this as, oh no, it means like every 7 years and every 49 years. But no, like that's committing the fallacy of univocality.
Yeah, I have to slow down a little bit here and reread this.
Yeah.
Because if any who are dependent on you become so impoverished, what are we defining as dependent on? Would that be just family? I mean,
it's pretty clear, like, this is talking about Israelites. Like, just any Israelite that's, like, essentially, they're indebted to you.
They've fallen on hard times, and they sell themselves to you, but don't make them serve as slaves. They shall remain with you as hired or bound laborers. Okay, so they're like workers. They're free to go, right?
Yeah, the word that's translated as hired or bound laborers here is sakir, is the same word that's used in Deuteronomy that says, like, hey, you benefited from the free labor of your debt slaves who saved you money if you had paid hired workers.
They shall remain with you as hired or bound laborers. They shall serve with you until the year of Jubilee. Is this more evolving? We talked about 7 years before, and now we're at 50 years. Is this another contradiction that's not a contradiction, or am I reading this slightly wrong?
Definitely a contradiction.
Okay.
People who you read this literally, like I said, they will try to argue that Exodus 21 and Deuteronomy are also in play. That every 7 years, debts go free, and then on the 49th year, it goes free. But that's not in Leviticus. That's not evident here. It's basically saying, oh no, the 7 years don't apply. You have to serve for 49 years. So to any sensible person, this is a regression.
Right.
Like,
Seems that way. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
I did see one Christian apologist try to argue, well, it's progressive if you look at it from the mindset of the enslaver. I was like, I'm sorry. But fuck you. Like, no. Like, if you are taking the side of the enslaver, you are,
yeah.
something's messed up.
Yeah.
Like, you need to go, as Obi-Wan would say, you need to go home and rethink your life. But yeah, so, and of course, when comparing it to Laws of Hammurabi 117, where debt slaves are freed after 3 years.
3 years. Yeah.
3 years, 49 years. Which one's more ethical here?
Mm-hmm. It almost feels like as time went on, they said, you know, what's a better deal? If we could keep them longer, because man, we are thriving with this free labor force that we're getting. What a deal.
Yeah, I think probably one way to look at it is that Deuteronomy is being written by someone who is empathizing with the enslaved people, with the enslaved, the Israelite debt slaves, with the poor Israelites, and saying, we need to have a better ethical way of doing things. Like, this is what ought to be done. And Leviticus is taking the side of the enslaver and saying, well, no, what's more beneficial is if they can exploit for longer.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, as we see, it's going to get worse because we're talking about Israelites here. They're benefiting from some protections as being Israelites, even though, like, if they're in debt, like, that's the rest of their life, especially with life expectancy back then. Like, there's no way, like, like most of the people, if this was enforced, would not have seen freedom.
Yeah.
After being dead. But going on into 44 to 46. As for the male and female slaves whom you may have, it is from the nations around you that you may acquire male and female slaves. You may also acquire them from among the aliens residing with you, and from their families who are with you, who have been born in your land. They may be your property. You may keep them as a possession for your children after you, for them to inherit as property. These you may treat as slaves, but as for your fellow Israelites, no one shall rule over the other with harshness.
I have a question.
Yes.
Directly tied to this. Because we just read that if they become indebted, then you can take them, and at least the Hebrews, you know, and they're not to be treated as slaves. And then we go a little further, as you've already alluded to, that it gets better, and that better meaning worse. And then it's like, oh, well, you can go out and get these slaves. Yeah. So what's the mechanism that allows me to do that? Is it poverty? No, it doesn't sound like it, right? It sounds like just because you want to.
Yeah.
That's how I'm reading it.
Yeah, this is most likely, as I read it, and as, like, you know, other scholars have read it, is it's foreigners that are coming in and are either selling themselves or selling, like, slaves that they brought in to Israelites. It's non-Israelites that are being bought by Israelites.
But there's nothing here saying I can't just take them. Is there? Can I just
the word for acquire? Yeah, the word for acquire can mean either buying or acquiring.
Okay.
We will see later that there are other mechanisms for Israelites to acquire non-Israelite slaves, prisoners of war.
Okay.
In this instance, I think it's talking about specifically buying.
Okay.
But anyway, is there anything else that you want to
ask? That was it.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I'm just processing a little bit here.
Absolutely.
Thinking about, like, how does one end up as a slave? And I know America's history and the slave trade. I know a little, not as not as much as I probably. And now you ever get to this point where you're just like, I think everything I know is wrong. So maybe there's just things that I think I know that are
Yeah.
not actually correct. But I generally accept that the slave trade that happened that led up to basically the birth of our nation was done forcibly. Like
Yes.
we went somewhere and we took people, and then they just became slaves, and they weren't
Yes.
necessarily in debt or or did a bad deed or anything like that. They were just taken.
Yeah.
You know.
Correct. Anciently, there was a little bit more variety on how one became a slave. We already talked about being indebted.
Uh-huh.
Also, if you were born to, if your mom was a slave, you're a
Sure.
slave.
Yeah, you're a slave. Yeah.
Which also, same thing for the antebellum South. Like that
Uh-huh.
was, if your mom was black, if she was a slave, you're a slave.
Yeah.
Um, Prisoners of war, like going out capturing,
Uh-huh.
um, your enemies. That's how you become enslaved. Uh, yeah, those are the main
Yeah.
ones: is being born
All right.
into, being uh, like owing a debt, like being impoverished and selling yourself,
Uh-huh.
or I guess if you are a woman, or then your father could be selling you as well. Uh,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, um,
Again, a
yeah,
concept I can't, as a dad, can't even comprehend. Like
yeah,
um, I, I have a hard time with these verses for a couple of reasons. Let's say you take it literally. Just on that alone,
yeah,
this is so awful. I don't want to have any part to do with it. Let's say you believe these are legends. Okay.
hmm,
Listen, I like horror movies, post apocalyptic shit, stuff like
hmm,
that. I also like Star Trek. So, like, I have balance. But I don't uh, generally like any type of literature that glorifies this type of
yeah,
behavior. And so, even if you take this as myth, you're
yeah,
you're cool with this? Like
yeah.
that's a weird thing to like say,
I
"Oh,
feel
well,
you.
that was just a different time."
I feel you. Like as soon as I became a dad, like
Yeah.
any media that has to do with harming children,
Yeah.
I struggle with. Like
I'm
I
glad
was,
to hear that. I'm the
yeah,
same way. Like my wife will watch these crazy ass psycho shows about like, things. I'm like, I cannot if it involves
yeah,
children being inappropriately, poorly treated, I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't watch that.
yeah.
I just can't. I'm
Two,
not saying anything about my wife. That's fine. Like
oh
we
no,
all
no,
have our
no. Like
things that we can digest and what interest us.
yeah, we all
But
have our thing.
yeah, yeah.
Two in two things in particular that like got me. I was trying to read it, and there's a scene where one of the bullies it goes back and talks about his backstory, and
Uh-huh.
it describes in vivid detail how he smothered his infant brother. And I'm like,
Hmm.
I had to skip it. Like I
Yeah,
could not.
yeah,
I was getting triggered so hard.
yeah.
And then Doctor Sleep, once again, another Stephen King
Another
thing.
Stephen King movie. Yeah,
Uh,
or book.
yeah, in the movie, it like shows these monstrous people like deboweling a kid that's not too much older than my son, and
Oh,
he's like screaming his head off. I had to skip it. I was like,
yeah,
no,
yeah,
I love horror, but I just can't.
yeah. And I think that's what makes modern tragedies like this so difficult, especially once you do become a parent. Whenever you hear about, I don't, maybe it's a school shooting, and you hear about like, oh, an 11-year-old, and I'm like, well, I have an 11-year-old, or
Yeah,
you hear Palestine, Gaza,
yeah,
and these kids that are, they're just living their lives, and y- it's heartbreaking, and like to,
absolutely.
but that's real life, and then
Yeah,
this is literature, kind of in a way, if you consider literature,
yeah.
to be glorifying. I don't know. It's just.
Literature that was written by people who were saying this ought to happen, this ought to be
Mhm.
how it is, and then later people used it to enforce
Yeah.
rules.
Meanwhile, there's other literature that's not this, that is roughly probably within the same time period,
Yeah.
right? That doesn't have all this stuff, and so
Yeah.
that's the other thing that's kind of hard to,
Yeah. I will
get
say,
into.
like, looking at the other laws and the Bible, it's not that the Bible's worse all the time. There are
Yeah.
times where it is worse.
Mhm.
They're more comparable. There's give and take. There's parts where the
Mhm.
Bible is a little bit better, and there's parts where it's a lot worse, and
Yeah.
so it's more comparable. It
Yeah.
is interesting to note, though, that the laws of Hammurabi were written 1,000 years before this, so they had 1,000
That's
years
yeah.
to be a lot better.
Yeah.
So, and
Something to think about.
especially when you consider, like, this is supposed to be the word of God, the golden standard for morality.
Right.
And it's not that much better, and sometimes worse than law codes of the pagans
Mhm.
1,000 years prior.
Exactly.
Like, I'm sorry, but something's not adding up.
Something's not adding up.
All right. Anyway, back to this. So with verses 44 to 46, it's clearly juxtaposing the foreigners who may be purchased and treated as slaves with the Hebrew debt slaves who are to be treated as hired workers. Like, pretty sure that's pretty clear. Like, it's saying, okay, these are the people who go free, who are not to be treated as slaves. Here are the people who are to be treated as slaves.
Yeah.
The foreign slaves are ahuzah, inherited property. That's the word for inherited property. And this is another instance where I did not notice this until last night. I take issue with NRSVUE because it's missing a word. Olam, forever, in perpetuity. It says that they are
Yes.
your possession forever.
Right.
The implication that and there's also the implication that enslavers may not treat their fellow Israelites with severity, with harshness, cruelty, but they can treat the Gentile slaves that way by implication, because it's saying, don't treat your Israelite slaves as slaves with harshness, but these people you can treat as slaves.
Yeah. You could make the argument that forever doesn't need to be said if it's just declared.
Yeah.
A minute difference, but if it's actually in the Hebrew text, then I think it should have been included.
It should be included, in my opinion. I'm not saying that they're doing it maliciously. There are parts where the NRSVUE is clearly massaging the text because it is sponsored by a Christian organization, even though it's like translated by scholars, like critical scholars. So it's the best English translation. Still not perfect. It still has issues. So, but talking about that olam, forever, I had a fun conversation with a supposed PhD on Threads who tried to argue that because, like, well, if olam is saying forever, it can't mean that because the slave isn't going to live forever.
Oh, okay. So just for all of their life then.
Yeah.
Which is pretty much forever.
They try to say that, like, well, it must be meaning, well, for a period of time. Okay, yeah, it's a period of time, but the connotation of olam is for a very long ass time, like, in perpetuity, forever. And when we put it in the context of Hebrew slaves are to be freed, the author of Leviticus is clearly meaning, like, but these people you keep forever.
Right.
These people, they're children.
Yes.
Like, they're your property for all time.
I mean, it's a nice racket, right? Get yourself a nice little family, have them crank out kids, and then they grow up and they crank out kids, and you just got yourself like a lifetime of, I mean, for all your lifetime, and maybe even for your own children, a lifetime of free labor.
I mean, that's how enslavers throughout history thought about it.
Yeah.
All right. So continuing on, now we can talk about how these enslaved people were treated. We're going to be jumping around to a couple different verses. Going back
Okay.
to Exodus 21. This is right after the verses about how to, hold Israelite debt slaves.
Yeah.
Verses 20 to 21. When a slave owner strikes a male or female slave with a rod and the slave dies immediately, the owner shall be punished. But if the slave survives a day or two, there is no punishment, for the slave is the owner's property. So,
I don't think that you could get a more clear couple of verses out of the Bible
yeah,
that is, I mean, maybe there are people that can apologize against this. I don't want to know who these people are because they are
I
clearly
wish I
pieces of
didn't know
shit.
who these people are.
Oh,
I wish I didn't, because I deal with them almost daily.
it almost starts off good, right?
Yeah.
When a slave owner strikes a male or female with a rod and the slave dies immediately. Now, you could pick it apart and be like, I didn't strike him with a rod. I struck him with my fist. So therefore, the rules are different. But, let's just say it clearly outlines what I would say some sort of murder to whatever degree.
Yeah.
In America we have first degree, second degree, third degree murder. So it's like, okay, cool, well, we'll just stop there. But then of course, but if the slave survives a day or two, there is no punishment, for the
Yep.
slave is your property. I'm a little bothered. I don't know which one I'm bothered most by, the beating, and that's okay, um or the inability to have a hard limit, a day or two.
Mm-hmm.
Just pick one or the other. Like
Yeah.
I'm kind of bothered by that from a literary perspective. I'm like, just make it 2 days, okay?
Yeah.
So, but that's what makes the reading the Old Testament very hard, because I just want to edit the shit out of it. I'm like, wow, you guys sure repeat a lot of stuff. Or in this case, you remove the extra words. You don't need them. So
Yeah. I agree. So getting into some detail. So we talked a little bit about the rod. So Hebrew word is shabet, which is a stick that was commonly used to discipline, fun part, both slaves and children
oh yeah.
by beating them on their back. We actually see later on in Proverbs, like actually endorsing not only this beating of slaves. So like Proverbs 29:19 to 21, by mere words, slaves are not disciplined, for though they understand, they will not give heed. Do you see someone who is hasty in speech? There is more hope for a fool than for anyone like that. A slave pampered from childhood will come to a bad end. And if we compare that to Proverbs 23:13 to 14, it says, like, do not be afraid to discipline your child. If you beat them with the rod, same words, they will not die. And you will save them from Sheol, save them from the grave. So it's the same idea of like, don't withhold discipline from your slave, don't withhold discipline from your child. You need to beat them with a stick. And if you do so, don't worry, they're not going to die. You're saving them from an early grave.
Well, they're a strong-willed child, so you need to.
Shit. Yeah. So this idea of like beating your slave and your child, like this is where the justification for spanking comes from.
Right. Yeah. Because that's the tame version.
Yes. Because like nowadays Christians, like typically some families probably will use an implement of some sort, but the general advice is like, oh, you gotta use your hand so you won't leave marks, so you won't be caught.
Yeah.
More than that seems to be the concern.
At least we switched it from your back to your butt, right?
Yeah,
So, I mean,
some
my butt
consolation,
is
I
small,
guess.
but has some padding,
Yeah,
where, I mean, if I got hit on the back, that's different,
yeah. It is more, from an objective point of view, it's more likely to be lethal if you're getting hit on your back than on your butt.
Hmm. Oh,
Um,
yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, like it's like my in-laws like kind of hinted of like, that we should start spanking our son, which
Hmm.
a lot of context that makes that hilarious because like they don't discipline my son at all in any way,
Yeah.
because like we prohibited them from spanking. Like we told them like,
Right.
no, that's a zero, no tolerance, do
Hmm.
not do that. So now they just let him get away with murder.
Yeah.
But whenever like there's other ways of doing this, more
Yeah.
effective ways.
Sure.
um but yeah, like whenever they try to cite the Bible, I was like, okay, so you want me to beat my son with a stick? Because if you're withholding the stick, you're already withholding the rod. You're
Yeah.
not disciplining right according to the Bible.
Hmm.
So if your only reason for doing this, or like telling me to do this, is because the Bible says so, like you're already like kind of fucking that up.
Yeah, and I had to look up I know that it's not in the Bible, the spare the rod, spoil the child.
Yeah,
I don't know, maybe I have that inverted.
there
Spoil the child, spare the rod.
there is like some verses in Proverbs that are similar to it. Proverbs,
Similar.
yeah, 23 is like the more clearer one,
Yeah.
but the spare the rod, spoil the child actually comes from like according to Dan McClellan, a erotic poem that
Yeah.
is more about like spanking in the bedroom. And
Oh,
so people
okay.
are quoting that to
Okay,
justify
fun.
hitting their kids.
Well, according to this AI overview, which I'm increasingly becoming less trustful of,
Oh, yeah.
it originated in the 1663 satirical poem
Yeah, that's it.
Hudibras by Samuel Butler. I will just highlight Google, search Google in a new tab, and look that up later.
Yep.
Just for
Yeah.
shits and giggles.
AI
But
is right
yeah,
occasionally. That's one thing that I will say though. If anyone listening to this comes at me and says, "Oh, AI overview disagrees
yeah,
with you on this," like, I'm sorry, no.
hmm,
Like, um, this is
yeah,
coming from critical scholars who've engaged with the sources, primary sources. AI is not going to necessarily have all of that. It's going to
no,
go with the most popular websites and stuff. So
hmm,
miss me with
yeah,
that.
yeah. No doubt, man. I've had it flat out tell me stuff wrong, and I'm like, this isn't right. And then I will ask it things like, can you give me your sources? And then go to the actual source and see
Yeah.
that it was wrong from the AI overview that
Yep.
it told me. So it's not a perfect technology. I acknowledge it's fascinating and
Yep.
it's got promise, but we're not there yet. So
Yeah. If it wasn't for the ethical issues of AI, like it is a useful tool. Just
yeah,
use it right. Go
right.
look at the sources that's giving
Exactly.
you.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to this. So if the enslaved person dies during the beating, the owner shall be punished. It's a little vague as to like what kind of punishment we're talking about.
Hmm.
The Hebrew is like there's a thing going on called a paronomastic infinitive. Fancy word for basically saying it repeats the same word twice in different like ways. In
Okay.
this case, it's a Nakom Yenakim, same root of Nakom, which when it's repeating two words right next to each other, it's basically saying like it's emphasizing it. We see this back in Genesis, whenever God says, "You will surely die." It's
Right.
moot to moot. It's saying like you will die. It's emphasizing this will happen.
Hmm.
And so, to be fair, it's saying like the slave will surely be avenged. Like is essentially what it's saying.
Right.
Avalos argues that this is likely not a death penalty offense. I actually disagree with him. I agree with Dan McClellan. The vagueness is likely due to the punishment often being different depending on the status of the enslaved individual and other ancient Near Eastern laws.
Mm.
Dr. Bowen also brings this up in his book, and he cites Laws of Hammurabi, 115 to 116 that say that debt slave's death would be avenged like death for death.
Yeah.
But chattel slave's death would not. Basically, it's just a fine. So
Okay.
that's probably why it's vague, is because the punishment would differ depending on who is being killed. And then continue on. If the enslaved person survives the initial beating, but dies a few days later, then slaver will not be punished because they are their owner's property. So basically it's saying that the loss of the property is punishment enough. And it's rationalizing that if the slave dies immediately, the enslaver was probably intentionally trying to kill them. While if they survive a day or two and then die, well, it's probably an accident. Because why would he, kill his property?
Yeah, why would he destroy his property? I mean, that's just throwing away the means of production at that point.
Yeah. So it's messed up. It's still like a lot of atheist critics of the Bible will point to this and say oh, the Bible is saying that you can beat your slave however much you want. That's not true. But it is not also saying that, while apologists will say, well, the Bible prohibits beating. It's that's clearly not true either.
Mm-hmm.
It endorses beating slaves, and it just gives a limit of how.
Yeah.
And another fun, sarcastic thing is we actually see antebellum slave codes echoing this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and later law codes, around close to the Civil War, whenever criticism started to be brought forth about how enslaved people were being treated, there's a Virginia law code that says that if an enslaver, a master, beats, just straight out kills a black slave, then he will be treated as if he killed a white person. Exactly, 1 for 1.
Wow.
But if it's an accident, then same thing. It's very similar. And it seems to me that it's borrowing from this. And so, the issue that a lot of apologists have is, they will say, well, the Bible seems to be giving rights and protections to slaves, while the antebellum South did not. The issue is, we're comparing apples to oranges because we're comparing the laws of the Old Testament to the practices of the antebellum South.
Right.
What we should be doing is comparing the laws of each. And the reality is, the laws provided supposed protections in both cases. The masters did not give a shit. The enforcement of the laws were not consistent.
Yeah.
And it's reasonable to expect probably the same thing would have happened anciently too.
Yeah.
Is because how do you enforce this?
I can't believe that I would get more uncomfortable with this topic, as we go. I was already uncomfortable with it, but yeah, good.
It gets even better. All right. So moving on, Exodus 21, verses 26 to 27, and then skipping a little bit to 32. When a slave owner strikes the eye of a male or female slave, destroying it, the owner shall let the slave go, a free person, to compensate for the eye. If the owner knocks out a tooth of a male or female slave, the slave shall be let go, a free person, to compensate for the tooth. So, this is usually framed as, well, look, there's protections for the slave. And it's yes, but you need to put in context. Because if you compare it to verses 23 to 25, we're talking about what's called lex talionis, talionic justice. In the previous verses, it describes that life for life, tooth for tooth, eye for eye.
Yeah.
That's how you are to repay damage done to a free person. So compare that to what's going on here. If an enslaved person's eye is knocked out or their tooth's knocked out, you don't knock out the tooth or eye of their enslaver. They just get to go free.
Yeah.
So it's protection for them, but
there's no justice. There's more like a get out of jail card with a slight payment of your own body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's protecting the enslaved person, but it's also acknowledging that they're treated as less than a free person.
Yeah.
And we see this continued with verse 32 that or going on to verse 32, it talks about like the context is like what happens if the owner of an ox, like the ox gets free and it does damage, it kills some people. Well, if an ox kills free people, the owner is to be killed.
Yeah.
Like they're held responsible if that ox is getting out all the time and is killing people. Because he should have been like keeping track of it. It's his responsibility. Go to verse 32. If the ox gores a male or female slave, the owner shall pay to the slave owner 30 shekels of silver, and the ox shall be stoned.
Yes. Clearly different rules. Yeah. Different punishments.
Yeah, because like people say like it's the Bible acknowledges the humanity of a slave. And it's like, okay, yeah, it acknowledges that they're human, but it doesn't treat them with the same level of dignity as a free person. It clearly and repeatedly treats them as less than, treats them as property.
It acknowledges the property of a slave is what it acknowledges. You know, humanity. Yeah, I mean, I guess in the sense that we acknowledge that you are human, but outside of that, what comes along with that, any kind of rights or privileges, just non-existent.
Yeah, I wouldn't say non-existent. There are rights, there are protections. Like there is like this wrestling of like acknowledging that okay, they have humanity, they shouldn't be treated completely as property, like completely dispensable, but their owner needs to have authority over them. Their owner needs to be able to beat them. Their owner needs to be able to, treat his property how he wants. So it's regulating that. It's giving protections, but it's still treating these people as property. Like that's the thing that people keep on missing. It's like, yeah, they're giving protections, but the protections are not that great.
Yeah.
And once again, there were technically legally protections for enslaved people in the antebellum South. They're still treated like shit.
Yeah.
Like,
jeez.
Like the point, like I just don't know how to emphasize to people enough that slavery is fucking bad. That owning people is bad. Hurting people is bad. And like, just because your holy text is telling you that this form of slavery was justified or your God endorsed this form of slavery, like, please think critically.
Yeah.
And recognize that, like, if your God, if anyone is endorsing something that is evil, that is harmful to others, maybe that's not a good God that you're serving. Like,
yeah. Right. That's the question to ask oneself, right? Like, is this good?
Yeah.
Just because it's written down, just because there are laws and, there are some definitions for how the treatment should be enacted. Does that still mean it's good or not? I know we all have different opinions on that. So, now,
absolutely.
I know you've got some stuff that you wanted to talk about. Moving on to, continue on with different punishments, like with like the sexual assault of a slave woman, for instance.
Yep. Leviticus 19 verses 20 to 22. This is a fun one that I actually just like. I've studied this stuff for 5 years. I'm still learning things.
Mm-hmm.
This is one that I overlooked, and it's another one that's fun. If a man has sexual relations with a woman who is a slave, designated for another man, but not ransomed or given her freedom, an inquiry shall be held. They shall not be put to death, since she has not been freed. But he shall bring a guilt offering for himself to the Lord at the entrance of the tent of meeting, a ram as guilt offering. So, compare this with the sexual assault of an enslaved woman. Well, sorry. Compare this with Deuteronomy 22 to 20, verse 25, where if a man rapes a woman, and it's clear like he is like, or it's relatively clear, that's a messed up bunch to begin with that we don't have time to go through. But I encourage anyone to read through those verses and think critically about them. It's messed up. But basically, if it's assumed that a man has assaulted a woman, he is to be put to death, a freed woman. Here, if it's an enslaved woman, his punishment is to not even pay a fine. It's just to grab a ram and sacrifice it to God.
Right. And I can't help but notice the parallels of modern times with pretty ancient ones, right? I mean, recently there was, it happens almost every day at this point, where there's a story in the news about some pastor that did something inappropriate. And I just read one the other day. I can't remember who it was, but there was somebody who admitted to doing something and he asked for forgiveness.
Oh gosh, yeah, that guy. Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, how is that any different than bringing an offering, basically to say, yeah, I screwed up. Sorry about that.
Absolutely.
Well, all is forgiven because God forgives me, because that's what God does, right?
The treatment of women in the Bible and the commodification of their bodies and using them for their sexual capacities. It is the reason why we have a rape culture. Is the reason why women are not believed, is the reason why whenever there are pastors, priests, politicians, presidents who assault women, it's swept under the rug. It's nothing is, it's not a big deal. It's because of shit like this, is because it is not considered important enough for the Bible to really take it seriously. And so if God's not taking it seriously, why should we? If God is protecting abusers, his people should too, is essentially how it's
just
applied.
Give an offering to say, I'm sorry, screwed up.
Just say you're sorry.
Just say you're sorry. Move on.
Oops.
Yeah.
Anyway, continuing on. Because keeps on. So just really quick, touching on one thing. Deuteronomy 21 verses 10 to 14 talks about whenever you go to war and you find a woman that you find beautiful and you want to take her into your bed, because once again in RSVU he says want to marry. That's mistranslation. She's to go through this grieving process for a whole month, grieving her father, her mother, all the people that you killed to take her. And after that, you may go into her. And in RSVU, he says, and be her husband. I'm sorry, but fuck that. I like Robert Alter's translation better. And it's pretty terrible. And afterward you shall come to bed with her, and you shall master her, and she shall become your wife, your woman. Because once again, the word here is Baal. It's master.
Right.
It's
Keeps
not
tying
husband.
in.
It's
Yeah.
so yeah, gross.
Yeah.
So, but if you are not satisfied with her, you shall let her go free, and certainly not sell her for money. You must not treat her as a slave, since you have dishonored, deflowered, you've humbled her. So once again, protections, yay. Still fucked up.
Yeah.
Her, yeah, word for marry here is lakah. It just means to take. So again, even the translators, the NRSVUE, are massaging the text a bit. It's important to note that her consent is never asked for, nor is it given. She is a sex slave here.
Yeah.
Even though it says like you must not treat her as a slave, the word doesn't really say slave here, just not to treat her harshly. As one would a slave is like the connotation. And I think that's very much linked to like not being able to sell her.
Yeah.
In the context. Like she is a sex slave. Like she has no way of consenting to this. She's just being taken, and yeah. Whether she's given the position of a wife or a concubine, whatever, she has no way to consent.
Yeah, I'm struck by the visualness of the like, and so you bring her home to your house. She shall shave her head.
Yeah.
Pare her nails. I don't really know what that means. Like,
I think
were
clip
they
her
really
nails
long before? Okay, were they really long before, and then now they're not? I don't know
In general,
what that
like from what I understand, like it's like the way that they would mourn in their time and their cultural context. Is
well,
like
I was just thinking about how it would really be visually evident to anyone that knew, like, hey, Steve's got like a woman, and she's got her nails done and her head shaved, so he must have taken her in conquest, or you know what I mean, like it kind of adds to the embarrassment, is what I'm saying, that of that. In addition to the mourning, I mean, I can see the need to do drastic changes whenever you're mourning. That's fine. So, but anyway, that's all.
Oh yeah, no, you're fine. But it's just one of those things where it's like, we see another aspect, another way, like when we talked about prisoners of war. She's a prisoner of war that's being taken without her consent.
Yeah.
She has protections. She's still a sex slave. Like, and even those protections, if you're not satisfied with her, she will be let go free. And go where? You killed her family. You conquered her people.
No doubt. She's just
like, yeah, she's fucked.
Yeah, she is.
All right. Going on. So from here, more talking about addressing a couple of apologetic concerns, like people who bring up some things that are some verses that they think, oh no, this verse over here shows that everything that we've been talking about, just want to emphasize that, everything that we've been talking about. No, like, despite all of that, the Bible doesn't endorse slavery because of these verses.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So Exodus 21:16 and Deuteronomy 24:7, they're basically talking about the exact same thing. And that's whoever kidnaps a person, wherever that person has been sold or is still held in possession, shall be put to death. And with Deuteronomy, if someone is caught kidnapping another Israelite, enslaving or selling the Israelite, then that kidnapper shall die. So this is often cited to show the Bible was attempting to undermine slavery or condemn the mode of acquiring slaves. used in the transatlantic slave trade. Like, oh, well, you can't kidnap people. And if you can't kidnap people, how are you going to acquire your slaves? And
Right.
as we've already talked about, there were other means of acquiring slaves.
Yes.
This is prohibiting illegal enslavement of free Israelites, like just grabbing free Israelites and enslaving them. You can't do that, but you still can enslave them if they owe you a debt. It says absolutely nothing about how you're to treat foreigners. So,
and I wonder how extreme you can take that. Like, let's say I owe you $5, right? And it's been 2 weeks. You know, can I take you as a slave? You know what I mean? Like,
I think in general, like from what I understand, take this with a grain of salt because I'm shooting from the hip a little bit here. Is like there would be some sort of contractual agreement. Like when the debt was taken out, it'd be like, okay, I will loan you this amount of money. You pay it within
72 months. Yeah.
You pay it within this amount of time, or I'm taking you, or if you designated one of your children instead, I'm taking them.
Yeah, that makes sense because I mean, see if we've got some of these other laws that specifically lay out a time period, it seems logical to presume that you know the consequences for like what would allow for slavery, for debt slavery or whatever, would be confined to some sort of parameter. So yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah. And we actually see a little bit of this in 2 Kings. I don't have the chapter and verse off the top of my head, but the story is essentially a woman comes to Samuel pleading for help because her sons are about to be taken as debt slaves.
Yeah.
And one apologetic is trying to say like, oh, well, they were glad to have this type of welfare. That's obviously not evident in the text. Like, this woman is afraid for her children's lives. She does not want her kids to be taken into debt slavery.
Exactly.
So yeah. But yeah. Yeah, I actually have a note here. Family members who were put up as collateral for debt were often captured by their creditors. So like, even with this, like, oh, they cannot be kidnapped. It's like, I mean, if you owe them money, yeah, they can come get you. And that's legal, as seen in Exodus 21.
Yeah.
And we talked about the majority of slavery in antiquity was acquired through prisoners of war, the birth, like being born from a enslaved woman, or because you've defaulted on a debt.
Yeah.
And another verse that contradicts this idea of like, oh yeah, no, they were against kidnapping. Numbers 31, 17 to 18. Now therefore kill every male among the little ones, kill every woman who has known a man by sleeping with him, but all the young girls who have not known a man by sleeping with him, keep alive for yourselves.
Right.
Which I shouldn't have to spell this out to you, but it's clearly saying like, go and capture these little girls for debt slaves.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. It's one of the, that's a hard one. It's just awful.
Yeah. And it's so clearly like this idea of like, oh yeah, no, the Bible had this other law that would undermine all the other ones. That's silly. It's not bearing out. It's not evident. And even when it comes to antebellum South, again, especially after the slave trade was abolished, you still had or the transatlantic slave trade was abolished. You still had trading going on in the U.S. You know, the majority of slaves at that time were slaves because they were born.
Yeah.
That way. And so, like, it just does not do what apologists say that it does.
Yeah.
Okay. And our last verse, fun verse of the day, you shall not return to their owners slaves who have escaped to you from their owners.
Okay, so we should clarify. We're Deuteronomy 23?
23 verses 15 to 16.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
All right, go ahead.
I thought I read it, but it's not. You shall not return to their owners slaves who have escaped to you from their owners. they shall reside with you in your midst in any place they choose in any one of your towns. Wherever they please, you shall not oppress them. So, what is often like claimed is like, oh, well, see here, if you escaped from slavery, you're scot-free. Like, there's a clear law saying that they can't like take you back.
Yeah.
So the question is, who is this enslaved person and who do they belong to? Scholars, like the vast majority of critical scholars, like Dr. Bowen has, like, to emphasize, he like cites like half a dozen back and forth like that say the exact same thing, is that this is a prohibition against returning runaway slaves to foreign masters, not to fellow Israelites. And part of the reason why is because of this, they shall reside with you in your midst in any place they choose. If they were an Israelite, they would have gone back to the land that was given to them. They would have gone back to their family. So more than likely, this is a foreigner that's escaped slavery from a foreign nation and has come to reside in Israel to escape. And it's a law saying, hey, you can't, like, don't send them back to a foreign nation.
Let's play steel man, though.
Yeah.
Even if you mean it the other way, even if it, let's say this is the correct interpretation, that like, if they run away, then they're cool. So basically, after everything we've talked about today, this is all you've got to rest upon, is that if they manage to escape their oppressors, then they're finally free. This is not a story of this is not a happy story.
No.
This is a story of someone that was so oppressed that they had to run away, and damn it, they deserve it. Like if you look at it from that lens, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that, after all we've talked about, it's horrendous, and then that's it. That's all you got to rest upon, is like, well, they got a fighting chance if they can escape.
Yeah.
I don't find that helpful. So
no, not at all. It's grasping for straws. And I get it.
It really is. Yeah.
I get it. Like your entire identity, your community, all this is wrapped up in this book. And here it is saying that, endorsing slavery and not once condemning it.
Yeah.
You're going to grasp for straws to try to hold on to that.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't work. It just doesn't.
Wow. Well, this has been a wonderful, and I mean that with the meaning behind that meaning. I like going deeper. I like asking the questions and really diving into this. And we shared some opinions about how we think about reading this. But it's been awesome, and I look forward to doing more about this, because clearly the New Testament's going to say some things that is just going to nullify all this stuff and make it all go away, right?
That is the apologetic, is that this is a progression, and that in the New Testament, Jesus and God abolishes slavery, and as a little teaser taste that we'll probably get into sometime next year after I move. No, it doesn't. Sorry, it doesn't.
Well, we'll definitely leave this as a cliffhanger, that there will be a part 2 coming about this, where we dive into slavery in the New Testament, the latter part of the Bible, of the Christian Bible. And that should be fun. I think, as fun as this is, I kind of feel a little nauseous, to be honest, but because the thing that I wrestle with, and the thing that I've asked, just to kind of put a bow on this, is how much of this stuff has been literally treated as law. And I'm a little unclear about that. I've certainly seen some rabbis that have said, we look at the Old Testament as legend.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine for those that believe that way. But I think that whenever you know about the more orthodox believers, that they probably don't treat it that way. They probably treat it more literally.
Yeah.
And I would like to know more about that. And
Yeah.
those are some of the questions that I still have about how much of this, has been literally treated in time, in history, as actual laws, just like the laws that you and I have to obey, on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
And so, and that's scary. I
Yeah.
mean, whenever you really dive into it about the Old Testament law and thinking about, did anybody actually implement these things, these rules? Were there people pierced? I don't think it's a far cry to say, yeah, they
Yeah.
probably were, because even in our own country, we've seen, as you mentioned, there were mirroring of
Yeah.
America's laws uh, versus this. So it kind of puts a different spin on, is America a Christian nation? I'd be like, man, I sure as hell hope not,
Yeah.
because this is awful. This is not a humanitarian way of looking at how people should be treated in any
Mm-hmm.
way, shape, or form.
Absolutely.
So, well, thank you so much for. Do you have anything else to add before? I don't want to cut you off or anything, but
I was just going to give one more teaser. You were talking about
okay,
how you're feeling nauseous after this.
yeah,
It gets worse in the New
okay,
Testament. It gets worse.
okay.
Uh,
But
As
I've heard it's
wonderful
all
as it
better.
is.
So
Yeah.
so.
It's worse. So, but yes, thank you for having me
Okay, good.
back. Thank you for
Yeah.
allowing me to use your platform to, as I said in our message, like bloviate on my hyperfixation that I've been digging into for the past 5 years. I hope
I
this
think,
is helpful for people.
yeah, I think hyperfixation can be good because it allows you to really dive, you kind of put on the blinders and just
Yeah.
really focus in on a particular topic. Because there's plenty of stuff we didn't talk about. So,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I'm glad that I'm glad you're this way, and then we can dive deep onto this, and go into it, because it's not something like this was not my forte. I'm
Yeah.
really interested in like the Hammurabi laws, like the stuff that comes before it and about how it gets copied and stuff, like that stuff
Mm-hmm.
that I kind of fixate on.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, we all find our purpose. We make our own purpose.
Yeah.
That's the cool thing. So you
Absolutely.
know, all right, man. Well, thank you very much. I hope you have a good weekend.
You as
And
well.
then until we talk about this again.
Yes.